Oh, well, goodness. So I know where I'm at here, which video. I think this is number 5. I wanted to finish this. I was going to put some more up, but I'm awfully tired and I'm not even making sense with them, I suppose. So I'm at this point connecting it. Um, but I'm going to put this here because a lot of things have happened. I've put up here about the mind control murders. I'm going to mention this one. It deals in patterns, and it's very hard to tell someone who they get lost in it or they just tune it out. That's what one of the FBI agent said to me some years ago in about 1982. He yawned, pretended he was bored. And when I was talking to him, he said, "You bore them. It's only when they find out how to fix them that they care." So let me see if I can get to this. I was talking about the roadway in Atlanta Square in Atlanta back a few years when what was her name now? Just put it up, but I lost my page. Uh, Barbara Jean Mackle. She was heiress to the Miami Herald. They failed to put this in this article, which is odd. They did say her father was a real estate developer. I remember this. I applied for a job there. This was after she was buried alive in nearby Gwinnett County again. In fact, this Google or Wikipedia article said that the two famous events there was the shooting of Larry Flynt, which is, horrible, and her being buried alive, Barbara Jane Mackle. Anyway, I tried to tell about, let's see if I can say this so you can understand. There are plenty of people who do or get the gist of it. Okay, Lenox had twin towers across from Roadway Inn, which is in Lenox Shopping Center there, by the side of it, where Barbara Jane Mackle was abducted and buried, and they found her just before she died. Uh, so Lenox Twin Towers is across the street from there. That's where Victor Gonzalez, the doctor who's still in practice, who has done such crimes, and he was the one that took me across to College Park in '72, and was drugged and put on the table there. And I've described this before, so I'm not going to be redundant again on it. Uh, and I kept thinking there was 6 people, small little clinic. It was still there in '82 in December by the trolley tracks, College Park. Anybody can look it up if it's not. I assume it's gone now. But it just had this one little hallway, and they took me to the back, and there was a few people in the waiting room. And I kept thinking if I could only tell them to help, ask them to help me. And then anyway, I was drug on back. So this is the doctor dragging me, so nobody would have helped me anyway. Got back there, and I'm going to leave out the rest. I've already put it up, so I can get this one up. I'm too tired to be even putting it up. Um, anyway, the people in the scrubs weren't there to help me. They wouldn't have helped me, so you understand that. Now then, Gonzalez that I'm talking about here was across the street in Lenox office, the Twin Towers over there. He helped in that. He was standing over me, and this is the 18.5 minute gap in the Watergate tapes that were subpoenaed, and the gap appeared in it where they are going. They're on the phone in the other room. You could hear them. It's right there where the surgeons. They had their little. I mean, what? I don't know what to do with it. What would you do with it if somebody was standing there and you were close to death, but this has been ongoing? It was Henry Kissinger in the White House with the president and the president's secretary. I've forgotten her name. These tapes were subpoenaed, and she lied herself. None of these people have gone to prison. Henry Kissinger is way up there, if not the head of the Illuminati now. So here he's ordering the lobotomy of the real Queen of England, and they know it. The Illuminati kidnapped me, Rockefellers, Rothschilds, Kennedys, brought me to Moulton, Alabama, part of my own family. Elizabeth's illegal. And the Roosevelts, okay, your Illuminati Freemasons that are now known as your United Nations. And don't they look legit when they're absolutely your global government? And they mentioned this in the end of times in chipping people. And so anyway, I didn't mean, and I guess I didn't mean to get into telling all that, but he was the one that took me there. You would think if that alone, if it happened to anybody, they would be concerned that these tapes were spliced or whatever, and it's got all this on it. So they closed it up, and they should reopen it and let me tell it, the one it was done to. Almost, because the Brits came through and crossed their palms with whatever they asked, so I lived to die another day is the way I put it. So I want to get back to this. So this is, by the way, that at that roadway in there at Lenox, which is where the girl was, Barbara Jane Mackle was abducted from and buried in Gwinnett County, where Larry Flynt was shot. The movie, I remember that very distinctly. The movie, I don't know at what year the movie, and that was after, I guess. Yeah, it had to have been after she was murdered. She wasn't murdered, she was buried alive, and they got her. But I was watching the movie. I went there to Lennox movie, and it had Billy Jack, the movie Billy Jack, and it was two-part. And where Tom Laughlin played a Indian, or I believe so, American Indian. And I was going to tell this because when I was out I got really upset, is why I remember the movie. I don't know what upset me, I really don't. But I came out crying, and I left and went home. Or my husband took me home, and the kids. And when I'm going to show you, and I can't get into the other things involved, in the pattern, it gets too much and you wouldn't understand it right at the moment. It's almost like you'd have to go to school a little bit for it. It was, so that movie happened at Lenox. And when I was out at Mr. Flint's in 83 now, he introduced to me to Tom Laughlin, who was one of the nicest, presented himself so well, and he even was a candidate for president. Well, now I was running for Congress then. It was I got involved in the presidency, and that was in October 83 when I was out at Flint's and introduced to him. Furnished the car, and I ended up in D.C. briefly, 6 months. And that's where I had the Hustler car and everything. And I was endorsed by Hustler magazine. Larry Flynt wrote an article, very nice, and it was April the 6th of 84, okay, after I'd been out and met Tom Laughlin. Now then, here's what happened later, just to show you a little bit. I'm back on, after I had the car for a year and no money, and I've told all this so I won't be redundant. I was in the same situation all over again, looking for a home, walking on the side of the road. People told not to help me. Really horrible, because you can get run over other than raped and all that, and tortured. I ended up in Chattanooga at a point, and still had a few decent clothes that I'd gotten during the campaign. And I met Mary Ann and Billy Jack McLemore. Now here's the Billy Jack name coming back in. And I'm going to skip the horror that happened with them and the ins and outs of that. He was in the Navy and retired, and he actually told me that just before he retired from the Navy, that they grabbed him and took him in a room and told him what he was going to be doing on a certain day and time, and he was going to meet me and what was going to transpire. And I believe him because I've heard it before, just like it. And he wasn't a nice person, and Mary Ann certainly wasn't. And I tell you where we lived in there, if you call that living, and I've described it, I shouldn't even mention it, ended up from Chattanooga going over there with them to have a place to be other than the side of the road, and got a cabin. There was 2 cabins right there in Madison, Tennessee, and right 2 doors down behind the fire hydrant, the fireplace they call you out to. I'm babbling trying to get this up. Trying to connect it quick. Well, if you got a fire, the fire engines and the fire station. Lester Flatt, or Earl Scruggs, is Earl. His son lived in that house, and his wife. I think he later, I don't know what, he was a singer or a guitar player himself. So anyway, this is where we lived, and that was horrible. Well, a few bucks or got a few food stamps, and they took them from me, and it was the pigsty that Mary Ann was her name. But anyway, it was the Billy Jack. I slept I had to sleep in the beds with the 2 girls some of the time, and they'd pee all over me in the night. So you had flies running through there, and the food stamps, the few that I got, they took. And I didn't have anything to eat. And I remember that the mailman I had met lived next door to my husband back some years back. He's supposed to be a mailman. He was, I think, I'm not going to say he was with the FBI. I can't be sure. But I stood there and was slapped across the face for calling because the little girl, Marion's little girl, was running up and down by the fire engines, and they could have killed her. And I did call and tell social services about it, and they came out, and of course they mentioned my name, and that's what the policeman was standing right there too, and he watched them slap me, and he grinned. This was in Madison, Tennessee, and I later came up here to Roanoke. Anyway, now I've probably lost you here, but that was the Billy Jack. That was his name. So, and I'd met Tom Laughlin. That was out at Flynt's, and so that was in '83, October, while at the home of Althea Flynt, Larry Flynt, and hustler publisher at St. Cloud, Bel Air, who had been shot by a program shooter in Lawrenceville, Georgia. And I wrote the book about mind control murders. And there's some things I'm having to leave out there. I'm probably not going to get this up. Larry Flynt's shooter was programmed and used patterns. That's what I'm saying. I'd never met Mr. Flynt prior to being out there in the campaign in '83, and I was writing the book when he was shot in '78. And let's see, bear with me here. I'm getting back to Larry McDonald was shot. I've put this up before, so maybe that should just skip it here. McDonald had been case subject in my book. He supposedly went down the KAL. I'm making a mess out of this, but I cannot. I am just too fatigued. So when I was almost murdered, Larry McDonald had been shot, and he was subject in my manuscript. We was shot. Juneau, Alaska KAL flew into the Russian airspace and shot down by a MiG. 10 miles in, this was a seasoned pilot, and they've told about that, and not just my word. But Nixon, this gets back to the Watergate tapes and Kissinger and President of the United States. All of them knew it about me. They still do. The Secretary of State, and it's not funny. I don't know. This is preposterous laugh. Yet they care about the 2 children that were coming over, illegal immigrants, and make a big, all your media's called out for that. And I'm not, and I'm not saying it's okay for those 2 to die, but I don't know, my life was worth something, a whole lot of money, wasn't it, and torture for me and the kids. So I put that up about the connection to Aurora, Colorado. It's almost like, okay, it's almost like them backing me up in it, Lawrenceville, Georgia, naming their theaters and going through this big deal with their theaters, and it was called Aurora Theaters, and Larry Flynt was shot there. Okay. Oh, well, anyway, Nixon was removed from that flight. Juneau, Alaska, went down September 31st of 83, and I was flown out to Mr. Flynt's because Larry McDonald, Congressman Doctor, was supposed to be aboard it. And there are those, and I believe it say that he wasn't aboard. The plane was taken down with all those passengers to make it look that way. Nixon was aboard that plane and taken off just prior to it. He was taken off the plane prior to going to in the air with supposedly McDonald on it, and 285 passengers drowned in it, were taken down. And the pilot had to have been under mind control. I mean, this is what I've been writing about. This was a pilot, not just my word for it, but professionals. I've read it and heard it, that he was seasoned pilot for years, and they wondered how he could make that mistake. He was programmed. So if you put a air marshal in there, they can program the air marshal to come out blasting you. So in putting school teachers in Parkland or other schools, they could come out shooting you because you're dealing with programming, something you can't see until they attack that and tell the truth about that before the world. It can't be solved. It's a weapon. Okay, I said that, and I guess I've... Oh, that's it. I don't see anything else that I'm rambling a bit too. Anyway, I'm going to stop here. I've done about all I can on this, and I hope I've made a little sense other than what I wanted to say here. And I know that people... I'm going to put this up so you can see it. I said earlier, and I can't remember the game, and I love the Crimson Tide. I don't know, I could go back and tell why when when Bear Bryant and Alabama was losing, and I'm going to lose my time on here and can't tell it. And then came Joe Namath, and then later, I wrote his name down. What was his name? Up in Minnesota, the Green Bay Packers. Can't remember his name. Anyway, I love the Crimson Tide. And I know that ball games they can program anybody, mass armies now. And anyway, you can get the gist of all of it. I honestly am going to say this. I should be able to just say it anyway because I know what I'm talking about. I can't prove it in this. I know that Alabama, and the people can get mad at me up in South Carolina. That's 20 miles from Green? Well, I better quit. I'm tired, as you can tell, I hope. There's something very important, the connection there, but I'm going to leave that. But anyway, you know that Alabama, anybody watched Alabama, not just now, but this last year knows Alabama should have won that game. Now, I'm going to leave it there. I love Nick Saban. I think he's a soul of honesty. I don't think he would know one thing about it because I really am impressed by him because I think he's honest and a good man. So he wouldn't know anything about it. Here's what I want to say before this goes off. Oh, please, I'm tired. I got to stop. The Scott Peterson murder, where they found his wife, Lacey, and the baby. There in San Francisco Bay. I had that written down. Anyway, there was a question asked, why was this ball game between Clemson and Alabama, that's my birthday yesterday, why was it held out there in Levi Stadium, San Francisco, near Modesto and all that? It was kind of odd, was my understanding, but I already thought that was a program ball game. And it was making Alabama lose. And that's what I'm going to say, and I'm sticking with it. And I wish that this whole mess would be told. I seriously do. And I still believe Alabama.